Hello and welcome to today's video, where we will be discussing the incredible life of Mary Bowser, a former slave who became a Union spy during the American Civil War. Mary Bowser was born into slavery in Richmond, Virginia, around 1839. Her parents, who were also enslaved, worked as house slaves on a plantation owned by John Van Lew of Richmond. Details about her life are little known as family members inadvertently discarded her diaries in the 1950s. Upon his death, in either 1843 or 1851, his wife and daughter, Elizabeth, freed their slaves. Elizabeth was an outspoken abolitionist. Elizabeth arranged for Mary to be educated in Philadelphia, which was rare for an enslaved person at that time. In 1855, Elizabeth sent her to Philadelphia to attend a Quaker school for African American girls. Mary excelled in her studies and returned to Richmond after finishing school, where she worked as a teacher for a short time before returning to the Van Lew household as a paid servant. Mary's intelligence and education made her an ideal candidate for espionage, and Elizabeth Van Lew, who had become an important figure in the Union spy network, recruited her as a spy. Mary returned to Virginia in 1861 and took a job as a servant in the Confederate White House. Her job was to gather information and pass it on to Union operatives. During the Civil War, Elizabeth Van Lew became a spy for the Union, and Mary Bowser was recruited to work as a spy in the Confederate White House. Mary's position as a servant allowed her to gather valuable information, which she passed on to Union officials through a network of contacts. Mary's intelligence and quick thinking allowed her to blend in seamlessly, and she was able to spy on Confederate officials without being detected. Prior to the war, Elizabeth regularly sent reports to Union officials about activities in the South. Knowing that war was coming, she recommended Mary for a position on the Davis household staff, and Mary proved to be a very successful spy for the Union. The household members assumed she was a slave. Thus, Davis and his cabinet members, as well as military leaders, spoke openly in front of her about troop strategy and movement. They also took for granted that she was illiterate, and so she was able to read war dispatches and other important papers Davis left out. Mary would then pass the information to Elizabeth or to other Union informers who would pass her information to military leaders, including General Grant. One of Mary's most significant contributions was her role in the Union's capture of Richmond, the Confederate capital. Mary was able to provide crucial information about Confederate troop movements and defenses, which allowed Union forces to plan their attack effectively. After the war, Mary's role as a spy remained a secret for many years, and it was not until the 1950s that her contributions were recognized. Mary's intelligence and dedication to the cause of freedom were truly remarkable, and her work as a spy had a significant impact on the outcome of the Civil War. However, her story is also a tragic one. After the war, Mary was largely forgotten and left to live in poverty. Her name was not recorded in history books, and it wasn't until the 1950s that her story was rediscovered. In fact, there was an attempt to erase Mary's name from history altogether. In the 1880s, a book was published that detailed Elizabeth Van Lew's work as a Union spy, but Mary's name was not mentioned once. It wasn't until a historian named James O. Hall did some research in the 1950s that Mary's story was brought back to light. Despite the attempts to erase her name from history, Mary's legacy lives on. She was a trailblazer, a woman who defied the odds and fought for what she believed in. Her work as a spy was instrumental in the Union's victory in the Civil War, and she is a true American hero. Mary's story is also a reminder of the importance of remembering those who have been left out of history. As we celebrate the achievements of famous figures, we must also remember those who have been forgotten. Mary Bowser was a remarkable woman who overcame incredible obstacles to fight for freedom, and her story deserves to be told. After the war, Mary remained in Richmond and continued to work for the Van Lew family. She married a Union veteran named Wilson Bowser and had several children. Despite her intelligence and accomplishments, Mary faced discrimination and racism throughout her life, and her contributions as a spy were largely ignored. It was not until the 20th century that Mary Bowser's story began to gain recognition. In the 1950s, the National Park Service began to acknowledge Mary's role as a spy and erected a plaque in her honor at the Van Lew Mansion in Richmond. In 1995, Mary was inducted into the Military Intelligence Hall of Fame, and in 2019, a statue of Mary Bowser was unveiled at the Virginia Capitol. Mary Bowser's life is a testament to the resilience and strength of enslaved people who fought against slavery and oppression. Despite the many obstacles she faced, Mary's intelligence and courage allowed her to make significant contributions to the Union's cause, and played a critical role in the outcome of the Civil War. Her story is a reminder that history is made up of individual actions, and even the most unlikely heroes can change the course of events. Mary Bowser's story is one that deserves to be remembered and celebrated. Despite attempts to erase her from history, it will never take away from her accomplishments. Her bravery and intelligence helped change the course of history, and her legacy continues to inspire people today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning about this remarkable woman. Subscribe for more amazing stories from remarkable people who have shaped our world's history. Comment your thought on Mary's heroism and leave a like if you enjoyed the video.